Good evening, everybody. My name is Simon Dubbins, Director International for Unite the Union. I'm a member of the Executive Committee of the Palestine Solidarity Campaign and the PSC Trade Union Officer. I'll be chairing tonight's webinar, which is titled Trade Unions Taking Action for Palestine. Let me start by thanking everybody that's taking part in the webinar tonight, and obviously especially to all of our speakers and everyone from PSC who's organised the event. We've got a list of great speakers tonight and a lot to get through in the 1 hour that we've got, so I'm going to keep my opening remarks very brief. But I did want to say that we are obviously having this webinar at an absolutely critical moment. Everybody has seen the horror of what's been happening in Gaza over the past year and a few months, and many of us will have been taking part in demonstrations and working as hard as we possibly can to build solidarity with Palestine and to stop the Israeli genocide. It's clear that although there's currently a ceasefire in Gaza, the situation is extremely fragile and delicate and quite desperate, and that at the same time the attacks in the West Bank are increasing and intensifying dramatically. It's also extremely worrying what Donald Trump will do, given some of the comments that he's been making in the last few days. So as always, we're at a really critical moment, and building solidarity with Palestine and the Palestinians is absolutely crucial. As always, our trade union movement has got a central and pivotal role to play in that. But it's especially important when we're in such a hostile and difficult environment as we are at the moment, and bearing in mind the intense repression that seems to be trying to shut down pro-Palestinian voices. Many unions and activists have been doing some great things, obviously taking part in the demonstrations, but also many other very important and helpful activities to build solidarity. My own union has got a proud history of sending regular delegations and taking part in PSC delegations. We've had campaigns in the past around BDS for HSBC and Barclays and Veolia and Sainsbury's. We've also pushed as hard as we can in the international and European trade union federations, and we've lobbied politically to push the pro-Palestinian voice and to oppose some of the negative measures like the anti-BDS laws that were proposed and put forward under the last government. But look, the real issue for tonight is to look ahead towards 2015 and to really ask ourselves, what can we do to try and help build solidarity with Palestine, with the Palestinians? What events can we take part in? What can we do in workplaces? I think we've got a tremendous list of speakers who I'll begin introducing, and they've got some great experiences and examples and ideas that they want to share with you all tonight. Just before we kick off, I do want to flag up that we have a particular focus on the Workplace Day of Action, which is planned for the 13th of February and which the Palestine Coalition has been organising. The next national demonstration is planned in London for Saturday, the 15th of February. We have also a Cuba and Palestine event on the 4th of February in London, the 6th of February in Liverpool. That will feature Omar Barghouti and the daughter of Che Guevara, Aleida Guevara. Let me also just say, don't forget, if you've not affiliated or a member of PSC yet, please do so, and please feel free to make a donation. All of the events I've just touched on will be put in the chat and made available to you. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our very first speaker for tonight, and I'm really pleased, and it's an honour to have with us Liz Wheatley, the chair of the International Committee of Unison. And Unison, I have to say, have been a union that's done some tremendous solidarity work with the Palestinians, especially around issues like the local government pension schemes, but also in many other areas around BDS work and other activities. Liz, it's great to have you with us. The floor is yours. Please go ahead.
Thanks, Simon, for that introduction. And thanks to PSC for inviting Unison to take part in this webinar. I think trade unions have a really important role to play in international solidarity. And that's so true today when we look at Palestine. Because I think I want to start actually by paying tribute to the scenes of the last few days, to the hundreds of thousands of Gazans who, after months of living in bombed out buildings and tents, have been making their way by hook or by crook back up to the north. I think it's a real testament to the determination of a people not to be driven from their land, and an expression of the phrase existence is resistance. And the ceasefire agreement may have made this happen now, but I'm sure I'm not the only one here who's on tenterhooks really about it continuing. So one of the things that we can do as trade unionists is campaign for it to be a permanent ceasefire and for there to be justice and accountability for the Palestinians in Gaza and in the West Bank, because being held to account for breaking international laws doesn't stop if bombing stops. And I think as trade unionists, we can also play a specific role in doing that. We can mobilise for the national demonstrations. We can get our members to march with their union banners so that we're a visible bloc. Because when we do that, other union members notice and feel more confident to join in, but also the politicians notice, which is really, really important. And also importantly, we can build the workplace days of action that Simon just mentioned. They've been taking place over the last year, and they're now backed by the TUC as well as by our individual unions. And they've been growing in strength, both in the size of the individual ones, but also in the number of places where union branches have been organising them. I am particularly proud that Unison has had more and more branches getting involved over the last months. And that's because members have responded to the publicity put out by the union, have felt confident because of that, and have used a new guide actually that Unison developed on how to campaign in your workplace in Palestine. The next Workplace Day of Action, as Simon mentioned, is coming up on the 13th of February. So it's time to get planning your action, to be honest, if you haven't already started. And I think really the bottom line is do something, but actually do as much as is possible. So if you've done something before, then try and build on it. Can you do a bake sale? So for instance, on one of the Workplace Days of Action in my union branch, we raised over £170 for MAP in just half an hour. And actually, to be honest, with quite a poor selection of bakes, it was a tribute to how much people wanted to donate and get involved. Can you do a lunchtime meeting at your workplace? Or can you do a petitioning session around BDS? Can you get your workmates to come out and have a group activity and solidarity photo? So we've done things like we've read poems from Gaza, outside our workplace. We've petitioned about our pension fund and much more on of them. And it all makes a difference. And it all makes people feel that they're making a difference and makes our movement stronger. I mentioned pensions and BDS, and Simon did, and that's another important part of what a trade unionist can do. Obviously, for local government workers like me, because of how our pension funds invest in all kinds of dubious companies, but also for college and health workers around investments and procurement. But of course, it's pensions that I know a little bit more about, because that's the campaign I've been involved in. And it's something a growing number of Unison local government branches are campaigning and starting to win around. The way I always look at it is it's like the mafia in reverse, because as council workers, we pay our, as clean as it can be, money into the pension fund, but it comes out dirty, covered in the blood of war and occupation, and it forces us to be part of an arms industry, part of the trade with illegal settlements, whether or not we want to be. Because actually, we all make all kinds of political and moral decisions about how we live our lives until we retire. But when we retire, we lose the ability to make those decisions because of where the fund managers and where our employers invest our money. There isn't an individual answer to that, though. The answer isn't to pull out of our pension scheme, because, of course, over the years, we've fought hard for a decent scheme. So it has to be a collective answer. It has to be something that we do as a trade union to campaign for ethical investment of our money. And because it's our money, we have a right to have a say over that as well. And you can see actually on the screen, I believe, we're going around some of the pictures of some of the things we've done on Workplace Days of Action. This was the most recent one, focusing around divestment where we took a petition to the council to discuss them divesting, which has been successful in other places. We're still campaigning, but hopefully they will give you some ideas of things you can do. I think the last point I want to make in my dying seconds is a really important one, and something that quite rightly is at the fore of the PSC campaign at the moment, because actually as trade unionists, we have to defend the right to protest. The laws that are being used to try to shut down the Palestine movement on the streets are the same ones that will be used to stop us striking, stop us picketing, demonstrating and organising. So we have to stand united, and that's across the movement and across the trade unions. So solidarity to you all. Get organised for the 13th of February. See you on the streets on the 15th of February. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Liz. Really, really appreciated. Thank you and all your colleagues from Unison for all the work and effort they've been doing to build solidarity with Palestine and the Palestinians. I can only echo what you said about the pictures, watching people return north, refusing to be displaced. Existence really is resistance. I think what you said about the workplace day of action is spot on, and important to remember that the TUC is supporting that as well now. And you gave us some great examples and real inspiration there. Thanks very much, Liz, much appreciated. Without further ado, colleagues, I'm going to move straight on to our next speaker. It's Martin Cavanagh. We're really pleased to have you here, Martin, National President of the PCS Union, another union that's got a very strong history of involvement in the Palestine solidarity work. In fact, your former Deputy General Secretary, Hugh Lanning, was president of the Palestine Solidarity Campaign for 10 years and is still very active, and many of your colleagues take part and do things. So really appreciated that you're with us, Martin. The floor's yours.
Cheers, Simon. Thanks very much. And very similar to Liz, I want to thank the PSC for inviting PCS to take part in tonight's webinar at an absolute critical time for the Palestinian people, but also our campaign for a free and independent Palestine. I do want to just start by giving solidarity to all of those who were arrested in the demonstration, Palestinian demonstration earlier this month. Clearly, that is a trade union issue. It is something that none of us can just turn a blind eye to and hope that that goes away. So on our behalf of PCS, solidarity to everyone caught up in that. Liz is absolutely spot on that we, at the end of the day, as a trade union movement, have to resist any attempts to try and block or stop us from protesting. Because if we don't stand up now, if we don't make our voice loud and clear on this issue, it will happen again and again. It'll happen on Palestinian demos, it'll happen on anti-racist protests, and yes, it will happen on our picket lines as well. Anywhere that they don't want us to mobilise, they will bring the arm of the law down on us if we let this go. So we can't let it stand. This is absolutely a trade union issue, and it's something that we should not shy away from dealing with head on. On behalf of PCS, I think the first thing I want to say is that we clearly welcome the ceasefire. The people of Gaza have been through absolute hell on earth over the last 16 months or so and before. And the respite, and any respite that they've got, no matter how partial and potentially no matter how temporary, of course, has to be welcomed. And we also have to welcome, as we do as a union, the release of Israeli and Palestinian hostages. I certainly can't comprehend, and I think few of us can, imagine the feelings of those people who have been reunited with their families and loved ones after months and months of agony. But for tens of thousands, let's not forget that there is no happy ending. For tens of thousands of people, they will not be meeting their families again because they are no longer with us. Thousands of children are orphaned, and many of those who are now returning to their neighbourhoods literally have no homes to return to. Again, they're gone. So whilst the ceasefire is welcome, and we have to accept and say that, it does not rebuild Gaza. It does not end the ethnic cleansing in the West Bank or dismantle the illegal settlements. And it certainly doesn't bring war criminals, because that's what they are, to justice. And it does not remove the threat of further ethnic cleansing moving forward. The words of Trump, the words of Netanyahu, the words of all the right-wing commentators tell us that this is an uneasy truce, an uneasy ceasefire. And so our campaigning and our solidarity for the people of Gaza and Palestine must continue, and it must continue until there is a free, independent and prosperous Palestinian state. So that is why, as with Unison, PCS will be supporting the Day of Action again on the 13th of February. Now, some of you might not be aware, but the majority of PCS members are civil servants directly employed by the government. And as a result of that, actually can't organise physically within their workplaces without risking their employment. But what we are doing and have done on all of the Days of Action so far is encourage our branches to not only support lunchtime events and rallies in and around the towns and cities where our members work and live, but is also themselves to organise their own off-site events necessary, whether it be fundraising events, whether it be rallies or speeches, whether it be organising with other trade unions to make sure that the message is loud and clear in our communities, because that has to continue, absolutely has to continue. And to facilitate that, we've already put a call out to all of our regional secretaries right the way throughout the UK to lead on the work to support branches to organise members in the area. We will absolutely not shy away from representing our members as a union on every national demonstration, on every local and regional demonstration as well, until we have the solution that we all want, which is a free and independent Palestine, free from the oppression that is being forced on them by Israel. And so I would say this, comrades, in my closing remarks, that we have seen an incredible, horrific historical happening in front of our very eyes over the past 16 months or so. PCS, at every single step of the way, has been foursquare behind and in support of the Palestinian people. We have refused to be silenced when the previous government tried to say to us that our members as civil servants were not allowed to attend demonstrations, were not allowed to speak on platforms. The threat of disciplinary action or dismissal did not deter us. And we have said on every single platform that we as a union will not be silenced while the genocide and the oppression continues. And we won't be now. No matter how long this ceasefire lasts, until we get the outcome that we all want, we will continue protesting and we will continue raising our voices. So whether it's myself as the PCS president or whether it's our General Secretary, Fran Heathcote, I want to give a commitment to the Palestinian Solidarity Campaign that you can always and will always count on our support and our solidarity. Whenever you ask, we will be there. Solidarity, comrades.
Okay, thanks so much, Martin. Again, really appreciated. Great contribution. Your expression of solidarity with those that were arrested, I'm sure, is absolutely echoed and shared with all of us. And I fully agree with you and Liz that it is a trade union matter, because these sorts of acts of repression undoubtedly will be used against trade unions and the wider movement if they can get away with it in this instance. So really appreciated what you said. I'm sure everybody as well shares your view on the ceasefire and the releases, but also how fragile and delicate it is and all of the shortcomings. And again, I think the example you're showing, even where it's impossible for your members to do something in the workplace, but the absolute determination, commitment and willingness to try and find other ways to encourage your members to be active is absolutely superb. So thank you very much, Martin, and all your colleagues in PCS. Really appreciated. Yes, thanks, mate. Without further ado, colleagues, I'm going to introduce, I've just lost my page, forgive me. I'm just going to introduce our next speaker. It's a video message that we have, and it's from Imam Al-Shayeb, who's a member of the General Secretariat of the General Union of Palestinian Teachers. And we're going to play the video now, please, Gabrielle. Thanks very much. Okay, colleagues, I think there were some technical issues, but it seems to be just beginning. No.
Hello, everyone. I am Iman Al-Shayeb. I am a General Secretariat at the GUPT. And I want to thank you all, especially Louise, on behalf of my trade union, the General Union of Palestinian Teachers, for your solidarity with our people who have been severely affected by the Israeli attacks in Gaza Strip and West Bank. And I want to thank you for giving us the chance to participate in the event to talk about the education system in Gaza and how can we rebuild it. As you know, since the 7th of October 2023, Israel has continued its war on Gaza Strip, leaving more than 47,000 martyrs and more than 111,000 wounded. Most of them are children and women. In addition to a massive destruction and famine, this aggression on Gaza Strip caused the complete elimination of the educational system. The Israeli government committed a deliberate educational genocide by the assassination of tens of thousands of innocent victims, including children and educational staff, in addition to the destruction of the educational infrastructure of schools and universities. It is a systematic genocide aimed at destroying the Palestinian education system in Gaza Strip and depriving generations from education, which is a main human right. There are 700,000 students who continue to be deprived of access to their schools for 2 academic years. More than 12,200 students and more than 500 teachers were martyred, in addition to more than 19,600 students and 2,600 teachers who were injured by the savage attacks on Gaza Strip. 90% of schools in Gaza has been completely or partially destroyed. The schools which have survived the war have been turned into shelter centers for displaced people. The United Nations schools, UNRWA schools also were being bombed or were turned into shelters for forcibly displaced civilians. These deliberate attacks on Gaza's educational infrastructure are having devastating long-term impact on our children's right to learn and express themselves freely. Because of that, many of our children suffer from psychological shocks and difficult health conditions, as more than 625,000 school-age students suffer from trauma and psychological disorders because they lost their families, their houses, and friends. Many of them become disabled because of the attack, depriving students for 2 academic years from education has many negative effects on their psychological health, their mental health, and their educational abilities. So the most difficult thing the educational process will face after the war is preparing students psychologically, emotionally, and healthily. Our children are in a situation that doesn't allow them to learn as they suffer from hunger, thirst, cold, bad health conditions, lack of electricity, and the internet. Our children's hopes and dreams are destroyed as well. The international community owe it to the children of Gaza to support their rights of education through doing the following. First of all, the accountability for violation should include a commitment to finance and rebuild the educational system in Gaza Strip. Second, the international community must send a clear message that those who target schools and universities will bear responsibility because attacks on education cannot be tolerated. Third, communicating with decision makers in countries and international organizations to provide a safe educational environment for our children. Fourth, providing a suitable educational environment for the amputees to suit their circumstances. 5, providing psychological support to students and to teachers in Gaza and West Bank. 6, finding a just and lasting solution to the Palestinian issue is important to ensure the sustainability of any effort to rebuild the educational system. And thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm sure on behalf of everybody taking part in this webinar that Palestine Solidarity will pass on our most sincere thanks and appreciations to Iman for the contribution that she's just made there. My apologies for the slight technical glitch before, but at least we were able to hear Iman and the horrific figures: 500 teachers killed, 19,000 students, over 2,000 teachers injured, UNRWA schools bombed, and the devastating impact on education and health, particularly psychological health. So I'm sure our appreciation will be passed on for Iman for at least being able to share with us an insight into what the current situation is, as well as what needs doing. Without further ado, colleagues, I'm going to pass the floor across to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Alex Gordon, former president of the RMT Union and Stop the War Coalition officer. Again, Alex, like the previous colleagues, has got a very long history of activity and involvement with Palestine Solidarity. And Alex's union, the RMT, has always been at the forefront of building solidarity as well. Alex, it's a pleasure to have you with us. The floor's yours. You're muted, Alex.
I think you can hear me now.
Yeah,
thank you very much, Simon, and thanks for the technical update lesson there. And I want to first of all just echo what was said by some of the earlier speakers, Martin and Liz, in sending solidarity to all those who've been harassed, arrested at the last national demonstration for Palestine, and in particular with the Palestine Solidarity Campaign director, Ben Jamal, and the Stop the War Coalition chief steward, Chris Nineham, both of whom, as many people will know, were arrested and have been bailed for the crime of upholding our right, our collective right, to protest against a genocide. And we're going to continue to protest against war crimes and genocides, and we're going to continue to support our colleagues and comrades who are charged by the police for undertaking civil protests. And as a trade unionist, I'm very proud to stand alongside them. I'm sure we all are. And trade union supporters of Palestine have had a significant impact on the debate in Britain over our government's complicity in Israel's genocide against the Palestinians. Last year's Congress of the TUC, the 2024 TUC Congress, clearly recommitted the trade union movement in Britain to redouble our support for UK recognition of an independent Palestinian sovereign state on the basis of UN resolutions, for an immediate ceasefire, for an end to the genocide, for an end to arms exports from Britain to Israel, and for a rebuilding of Gaza. And President Trump's latest remarks endorsing ethnic cleansing of Palestinians from Gaza is a reminder that our country, Britain, needs an independent foreign policy not tied to the interests of the United States. So what can we do as trade unionists now, today, to build the support for workers in our workplaces and communities for a free Palestine? Well, comrades, coming up, we've got very soon the 5th or possibly 6th National Workplace Day of Action for Palestine. Liz Wheatley mentioned it earlier. I'm going to remind you it's on the 13th of February 2025. It's taking place nationwide, everywhere, schools, colleges, offices, railway stations, factories, depots, and we're calling on all trade unionists and workers to plan and carry out an action, however small, in your workplace or outside your workplace, and to hashtag it, hashtag workplaces for Palestine. Please get organised now. We've got 2 weeks before the 13th of February. The horrors that we've seen in Palestine and across the Middle East make it absolutely necessary for trade unionists to do all we can to call on the UK government to end its support for Israel and its complicity in the genocide of the Palestinians. So please, here are some ideas. Distribute some badges, get some Palestine solidarity lanyards like the one that I'm wearing from the PSC. Get your colleagues to wear identifiable items of clothing in the workplace in the colours of the Palestinian flag. Wear a keffiyeh. Organise a 2-minute silence at work for Palestine. Call a rally at lunchtime. Get people to speak from your union about the struggle of the Palestinians for freedom and independence and against the genocide. Organise a stall outside your workplace as workers come in. Urge people to contact their MP by tweets or emails to demand that the UK ends arms exports to Israel. Invite people to a Palestinian lunch or have a cake sale or a bake sale. Do a collection, a petition for medical aid for Palestine in the workplace, or get everyone to change their Zoom background to a Palestinian flag. Do something that shows and illustrates your solidarity with the Palestinians, that brings across our message to the people that we work with day in, day out. And finally, I want to just give a shout out to the work that's being done by health workers for Palestine, and in particular the campaigning that's going on in NHS trusts against the rollout of the federated data platform and the supplier of that technology, the United States-based company Palantir. Despite widespread concerns raised by the public and human and data rights campaigners, the previous Tory government awarded a $330 million contract to Palantir, a controversial US surveillance technology company. And Amnesty International's UK Human Rights Director has said any NHS public procurement tenderers whose activities have been linked to serious human rights abuses, as is the case with Palantir, should be excluded on grounds of grave professional misconduct, as permitted under procurement law. Now, Palantir specialises in AI-powered military and surveillance technology and data analytics, such as predictive policing algorithms, and these are widely acknowledged by bodies such as the Massachusetts Institute of Technology Review as racist. Palantir provides technology to support policing and warfare, not healthcare. And the company is owned by a devout Trump supporter who's previously voiced opinions against the NHS and said that the NHS makes people sick. So it's really important, therefore, that trade unionists in our workplaces, in our trade unions that organise health workers, are taking up these issues, because the fight for Palestinian freedom is the same fight that we're involved in as workers at the workplace against privatisation, against the intrusion and policing of our working lives and our social lives. So when we say solidarity with Palestine, we mean it. Comrades, I want to see you all out there building for the 13th of February, which is the National Workplace Day of Action for Palestine. Solidarity. Thank you.
Thanks so much again, Alex, for your inspiring words, for really drawing together the links between trade union struggle and the struggle of solidarity with the Palestinian people and their particular struggle as well, for reminding us about the TUC motion, which I believe was passed unanimously at the last conference. And also just flagging up again the dangers of Trump and his comments about ethnic cleansing, which could not have been clearer in terms of who he's been listening to and the dangers of the direction that the US is very, very likely to go in. But most of all, your examples of what people can do in the workplace. We appreciate some workplaces it's easier, some it's difficult, but you gave people some really good concrete examples there of what they can do in their own workplaces in order to demonstrate our solidarity with Palestine. Thanks very much, Alex, and to all of your colleagues at the RMT. Really appreciated. So our next speaker, colleagues, I will move straight across to our next speaker. We're really pleased to have with us tonight Katie Fox-Hodds, who is the Senior Lecturer in Employment Relations at the University of Sheffield and an organizer and labour educator with an organisation called Workers in Palestine. The organisation really works with many different unions around the world, and I understand aims to give them ideas for actions and support about building solidarity activities with Palestine. So Katie is going to share with us some of her experiences and thoughts and ideas for 2025. Katie, it's great to have you with us. The floor's yours.
Thanks very much, Simon, and thanks everyone for being here tonight. So as Simon said, Workers in Palestine works to support trade unionists around the world to move beyond resolutions, donations, and symbolic actions to organizing effective solidarity with Palestine. We are interested in supporting trade unionists to move toward actions that have a material impact on Israel's ability to carry out business as usual, including industrial action, arms blockades, and pension divestment campaigns. Workers in Palestine grew out of the calls from the Palestinian trade union movement for global worker solidarity to end all complicity and stop arming Israel. We build worker-to-worker and union-to-union connections between Palestine and the global labor movement. One of our key messages is that Palestinians, of course, are workers too, though you wouldn't know it from media coverage. Though Palestinian workers bear the brunt of a devastating economic crisis exacerbated by Israel's colonial policies, they remain at the heart of this struggle, and they are asking for our solidarity. We are currently working with a wide variety of trade union activists, from doctors to dock workers, academics to arms workers, and everything in between. Here in the UK, we are working with rank and file members from a variety of sectors and unions, including Unite's aerospace sector, UCU members in higher education, BMA members in the NHS, and equity members in the arts. In the brief time I have here, I want to just share 3 key lessons from our work over the past 15 months in the UK, the US, and other countries that may be helpful for those of you looking to organize in your workplaces. So the first lesson that I wanted to share from our work over the last 15 months is the need to move from what the longtime labor organizer Jane McAlevey calls activism to what she calls long-term strategic organizing for Palestine within the trade union movement. While there are, of course, many vital exceptions, too much of our work as a movement, that is, as a trade union movement, in terms of Palestine, has been reactive and aimed at sporadic, one-off events that fail to move the needle. Focusing our attention instead on carefully developed strategic targets, and then putting in the time and energy to do the work of building support among our coworkers over the long haul is where we see real change come about. So we are really urging a reorientation within the trade union movement among those of us who stand in solidarity with Palestine, from activism to really embedded, deep organizing at the workplace level, moving over the long term toward action. The second lesson I wanted to share from our work is the importance of rank and file led action. So support from union officials is, of course, greatly appreciated and can embolden rank and file workers to take action. But at the end of the day, the strongest campaigns that we've seen have invariably come about from workers taking the initiative to educate and organize their coworkers. As a movement, too much of our time and energy has been lost in pressuring national unions to change their positions. This is time and energy that could be better spent organizing on the ground with our coworkers. And for those national unions who are on the right side of history when it comes to Palestine, it is essential that they extend their full support, moral, financial, legal, and otherwise, to supporting rank and file workers when they take a stand for Palestine. We've heard already several times this evening about the repressive environment here in the UK, certainly in the country I'm from, the US as well. And that really just underlines how vital it is that our national unions extend their absolute support to rank and file workers who are brave enough to take action on this critical issue at such an important time. And finally, the third lesson that I'd like to share is the need to develop campaigns that are specific to particular workplaces and sectors. What we found is that a one-size-fits-all model really does not work. Workers in arms supply chains, including dock workers and arms factory workers, have focused their efforts on campaigns aimed at shutting off the supply of weapons to Israel. University workers have focused their efforts on campaigns targeting research contracts with arms firms. Medical workers here in the UK, as we just heard, are campaigning against the NHS contract with Palantir, while tech workers in several countries are campaigning against their employers' complicity and surveillance. Finally, public sector workers in many countries, including, as we've heard here in the UK, are using their unique leverage with public authorities to pressure them to drop investments, including from pension funds. So these are just some examples of the kinds of targeted sector-specific campaigns that that we believe provide the strongest path forward, because they give us as workers the most leverage. They're targeted to our specific contexts. So to conclude, I just want to acknowledge that it can feel daunting starting out on this path to getting involved with organizing on Palestine in your workplace or in your union. So what I'd like to say to anyone starting off on that path today is please to know that there are thousands and thousands of trade unions around the world who are walking this path of solidarity with you. You're not alone. You are joining a movement of millions. If you're a rank and file trade unionist and wondering how to get started or how to progress a campaign, I'd like to encourage you to visit our website, where you can find a number of different resources, including research on the arms industry and organizing guides. We also offer occasional organizing trainings, which you can learn about by joining our mailing list. Thank you very much, and solidarity.
Thanks again, Katie. It's absolutely fantastic to have you with us, and your contribution was excellent and informative. I noted particularly the need to move beyond symbolic actions towards impact-focused actions. And if I took them down right, your three key lessons were move from activism to long-term strategic action. The importance of rank and file actions being absolutely crucial, and also specific campaigns needing to be tailored and made to fit, and no one size fits all. So really appreciate your advice and thoughts built on a lot of experience, Katie. It's great to have had you here. Many thanks for your time and input. colleagues, without further ado, I will move on to our next speaker. Let me just remind people again, National Workplace Day of Action, 13th of February. So please do what you can in your workplace. The national demonstration is on Saturday, the 15th of February. Cuba and Palestine event featuring Omar Barghouti and Aleida Guevara, 4th of February in London, 6th of February in Liverpool. And of course, affiliate to Palestine Solidarity Campaign, and please donate if you can. Okay, colleagues, we will move straight across now to our next speaker. It's great pleasure to introduce Lewis Backton, who is the campaigns officer of the Palestine Solidarity Campaign. Lewis has been an absolutely tireless worker on all sorts of different areas and campaigns, and he's going to share some of his experience, knowledge and thoughts for 2025 with you. So Lewis, great to have you. The floor's yours.
Thanks, Simon, and hi everyone. Great to be here. I'll start by echoing what Katie said around how absolutely essential it is that all of us here work tirelessly to end the complicity of our government, our local councils, and corporations active in this country that works to uphold Israel's system of oppression. I want to speak briefly about one way in which trade unionists can do this, which is through the campaign led by PSC calling on the local government pension scheme, or LGPS, to divest from companies enabling Israel's crimes against Palestinians. The LGPS is one of the largest public sector pension schemes in Britain. It is made up of 86 constituent pension funds, each of which is administered by a local council, with investment decisions being made by a pensions committee made up of elected local councillors. Around 6.5 million people in England and Wales are part of this scheme. So yeah, it's a large scheme with many workers, both those directly employed by local councils and also other kind of associated bodies. PSC's research has identified that collectively these 86 pension funds invest billions in companies enabling Israel's crimes against Palestinians. This includes many companies supplying Israel with weapons and military technology used to attack Palestinians. To give some examples, our latest research has found that collectively LGPS funds invest over 450 million in BAE Systems, which manufactures components integrated into Israel's fighter jets used to bomb Gaza. Over 80 million is invested in Caterpillar, which manufactures bulldozers used by Israel to demolish Palestinian homes, schools, and hospitals. 190 million is invested in RTX Corporation, formerly called Raytheon, which produces bombs used by the Israeli military. In addition, LGPS funds invest millions in Israeli banks, which finance the expansion of illegal Israeli settlements on stolen Palestinian land in the occupied West Bank. While in addition, LGPS funds also hold around £28 million worth of Israeli government bonds, therefore effectively lending Israel money to carry out its atrocities against Palestinians. The deferred wages of millions of workers in this country are being funneled against their wishes into companies enabling grave human rights abuses. This is absolutely shameful, but we shouldn't feel powerless. The LGPS can only invest like this because scheme members don't know how their deferred wages are being invested. If people did know, they'd be horrified and they want to act to change it. Across Britain, scheme members and local residents are getting organised, running campaigns to put pressure on pension committees to begin divestment from companies enabling Israel's crimes, and these campaigns are beginning to get results. Just last week, Tower Hamlets Council passed a motion committing to divest from arms companies following a joint campaign by Tower Hamlets PSC, Tower Hamlets Unison, and Tower Hamlets Trade Council, while earlier in the month, Bristol City Council passed a motion calling on Avon Pension Fund to divest from arms companies and companies active in Israel's illegal settlements. If you are a member of this scheme, your voice is absolutely essential. This is your deferred wages being invested in companies enabling Israel's war crimes. If you're in a union branch that represents members of the scheme, write to members of the Pensions Committee as a branch. Request to make a deputation at the next Pension Committee meeting, or start an open letter of scheme members to submit to the committee. If you're not a member of the LGPS, get involved in your local PSC branch, which will be campaigning for divestment. The last thing I'll say just to wrap up is that, you know, what we're asking for LGPS funds to divest from these companies, it's not a charitable act. What we want is local councils to stop doing harm, to recognise their profound moral and indeed legal obligation to cease any support for Israel's regime of oppression against Palestinians.
Okay, thanks very much, Lewis. Very comprehensive intervention, and particularly on the local government pension schemes and the 86 key funds, and the message of trying to push them to end complicity with the Israeli system of oppression. And thanks so much for the work you do, Lewis, like everybody at Palestine Solidarity Campaign. We know that the last period has been extremely intensive with all the additional activities. So thank you very much, and thanks for your intervention tonight. Really appreciated. What I'm going to do, colleagues, is move straight across to our next intervention, which is a recorded message from the General Secretary of the National Education Union, Daniel Kebede. Obviously, the National Education Union has played a big role in Palestine Solidarity Campaign and all of the activities, and indeed our chair, Louise Reagan, is from the NEU Union, and sends her apologies for not being able to be here tonight due to other commitments. But NEU have always played a really critical role, and it's great that Daniel's managing to send a message. If we can play Daniel's message,
everyone,
that would be great.
Daniel Kebede. Hello everyone, Daniel Kebede, General Secretary of the National Education Union. Look, we mustn't stop talking about Palestine. We must not stop talking about Gaza. The conflict that has lasted more than a year has created a humanitarian crisis that deeply affects the most vulnerable amongst us, our children. Now, according to UNICEF, over 1.5 million children in Gaza are in need of urgent humanitarian assistance. Now, this is not merely a statistic. It represents lives filled with fear, with uncertainty, and filled with trauma. Now, we know that over 50% of the population in Gaza are children, and with the escalations of violence, countless lives remain at risk. Now, Save the Children reports that in just 1 year, the number of children killed or injured in the conflict reached alarming levels, with thousands upon thousands enduring the psychological scars of war. Solidarity with Palestine is not just a political stance, it is a moral obligation. We must remember that behind every statistic is a child with dreams, with hope, but of course with the right to a peaceful existence. Now, our support can bring awareness, it can bring resource, but ultimately it has to bring change. So let's stand firm in our commitment to advocating for the rights and dignity of children, regardless of their background or nationality, because together we can amplify the voices that are often silenced and work towards a future where peace and justice can prevail.
Okay, that was Daniel Kebede, the General Secretary of the NEU. Again, a really moving intervention, underlining just how deep the damage has been to children in Gaza and Palestine as a whole, and reminding us that it's not just a campaign, it's also a moral obligation that we all do what we can to build solidarity and stop the system of oppression and suffering that is going on in Palestine. Colleagues, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to our final speaker this evening. It's Ben Jamal, the director of the Palestine Solidarity Campaign. I'm sure everybody on the call and all of the speakers know Ben. He's been the figurehead, not just in the last year, but for a number of years now. He's done a fantastic job in giving Palestine Solidarity Campaign direction. We all know what happened with Ben and the legal action that the police are now trying to take against Ben. And I'm sure on behalf of everybody, you'd want me to express our solidarity to Ben. And obviously, we're 100% behind you and really appreciate all of the work you've done and the leadership you've given, Ben. The floor's yours.
Thank you, Simon. And listen, thank you to all of our trade union comrades, not just for their interventions tonight, but for their solidarity for the past 16 months, but for many, many years before that. Look, let me just say from the start that we are all aware, I'm sure, that we are gathering here 9 days into a ceasefire that we welcome, but that has been a central demand of our movement for 16 months. We gather here, as Liz said at the start, still absorbing the almost biblical scenes of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians walking back towards their homes in the north of Gaza, or what is left of their homes. We celebrate with them that once again, as they have always done, they have endured and risen from the midst of destruction, even in the face of genocide. We gather here, though, also in the aftermath of Netanyahu, indicating that he regards this as a temporary pause, a chance for Israel, with Trump's support, to rearm with a restocked arsenal of 2,000-pound bombs, which, when it sees fit, it is prepared to drop again on Gaza. We gather here with the President of the United States, as Simon reminding us, suggesting that the plan for Gaza now should be a mass ethnic cleansing of millions of Palestinians to Jordan or Egypt or wherever. And we gather here 9 days into Israel's intensifying military assault on the West Bank, begun simultaneously with the ceasefire in Gaza, which has now to date killed 18 Palestinians, 2 more killed today, wounded hundreds, destroyed over 100 homes. And alongside these military assaults, we've seen an escalation of settler attacks under the protection of Israeli forces. On Monday, settlers setting fire to homes and a children's nursery in the villages of Jinasfut and Funduk, injuring 21 Palestinians. All of you will be aware that none of these events have led to a single word of condemnation from Keir Starmer or David Lammy. Indeed, Netanyahu told the world that in a call last week with Keir Starmer said he was now reviewing whether this was the moment to restore the suspended arms licenses for weapons to Israel. And of course, whilst our government, which consistently spoke about the need when a ceasefire was called to find a pathway to peace, whilst it stands silent as the US and Israel map out instead a path for entrenched occupation and potentially a second Nakba of mass ethnic cleansing, our government is also acting here to repress our movement. On January the 18th, having issued a ban to prevent us marching to the BBC, we saw the Metropolitan Police, with the government's backing, enact a severe assault on the right to protest, arresting 77 people, issuing charges against many, including, as we've heard, against the vice chair of the Stop the War Coalition, my comrade Chris Nineham, and against me. I intend to contest those charges vigorously, and I thank everyone who sent messages of solidarity. And many of you will have seen the statements from legal scholars, from Amnesty International. Tomorrow we will have a statement from over 50 parliamentarians and a statement from general secretaries of trade unions, all condemning these actions and calling for an independent inquiry. Now, it was very clear, I think, on January the 18th, that the police, backed by the government, wanted to create a scene of chaos and disorder that would create the political climate to allow the Home Secretary to go into Parliament to announce she was now banning all future marches. They did not succeed, and the reason they did not succeed is, despite all of the lies, the reality is this is a peaceful and disciplined movement founded on principles of justice and anti-racism, and that people, even in the face of the most extraordinary provocation, maintained those principles and that discipline. But what is at the heart of this repression is a deeper effort by Israel and its allies, a decades-long effort to silence and isolate the Palestinian people, to delegitimize and end their struggle for freedom, so that Israel is allowed with impunity to continue its regime of Jewish supremacy. Not just my words, those are the words of B'Tselem, Israel's leading human rights body. So we do not lose sight as we fight the battle for our right to protest. We do not lose sight of what has brought so many millions to the streets in solidarity. There was a reason why so many came to Whitehall on Saturday the 18th as we stood on the brink of that ceasefire. We came to remember and to mourn with the Palestinian people the tens of thousands slaughtered in this genocide, to remember and honor Palestinians like 7-year-old Sidra Husuna, who was blown from her home with such force that her body was left hanging like a piece of meat from a wall in Rafah, to honor and remember Palestinians like Shaban Al-Dalu, burned alive in a tent in Rafah while still tied to his IV drip. And we came to stand again with the Palestinian people as they prepared to return to the ruins of their homes, to dig with their bare hands through the rubble, to find the remains of their loved ones and to give them a proper burial. And we came to acknowledge that even if this ceasefire holds, the genocide in Gaza is not ended, that more Palestinians will die from their injuries, from the trauma that they have suffered, and from their lack of access to services as Gaza's hospitals and welfare systems lie in ruins. And finally, we came to assert the truth that we have been iterating for many months, that this genocide is built on the foundations of 76 years of colonization, occupation, and apartheid, a system of oppression that, as I said, is now being resumed with brutal force and renewed with brutal force, especially right now in the West Bank. So we will defend our right to protest. We will not be silenced, but nor will we be distracted from our fundamental purpose, of which Lewis just reminded us, to act to end all of the complicity of our government, our public bodies, our companies, and our corporations. This is not the moment to demobilize. This is the moment to escalate all of our campaigning. And that is why it is important that we continue with the divestment campaigns that Lewis outlined, that are now bringing victories, with council after council beginning to make, finally, commitments to divest from complicit companies. So I thank you for coming tonight. I urge you to take place in the workday of action on February the 13th. I urge you to be back on the streets with us again on February the 15th. It is important that that demonstration is of extraordinary size. I will end by repeating the words I delivered from the stage in Whitehall on January the 18th. We do not stop. We will not stop. We never stop until every brick in the wall of apartheid that imprisons and oppresses the Palestinian people is finally demolished, is ground into the dust, until every Palestinian scattered across the globe is finally able to return to their homeland, and in every inch of that land, in Rafah, in Haifa, in Ramallah, and in Jerusalem, is finally able to live in freedom with justice and equality. Onwards together.
Thanks very much, Ben. Really appreciated you being available tonight. We know how much you've got on, and as always, your words really pulled everything into a very, very sharp and moving focus. I just want to underline what you said about the provocations on the march. I was there myself, and it was really noticeable how much more aggressive the police were on that particular day. And there was no doubt in my mind at all that it was a provocation for the reasons you outlined. They were looking to create an incident upon which they could then move towards banning our marches, and we must do absolutely everything to stop that happening. It's part of a wider agenda and strategy to silence all pro-Palestinian voices, as you said, in the wider society and indeed in many other sorts of organizations and institutions. And we must absolutely stand together to resist that. To all of us that have participated in this, we're all trade unionists and activists, and we know that standing together in solidarity is how we move forward, how we make progress. We've always done it throughout our history, whether that be in standing with the struggles and fights for rights in Colombia or against apartheid in South Africa. And we will rise to the occasion and stand together and continue to build our solidarity with the people of Palestine going forward. Let me just close the session, colleagues, by putting on record on behalf of everybody who's taken part our sincere thanks to everybody from Palestine Solidarity Campaign, from Lewis and Martial and Gabriel, who nobody's seen but has been doing all of the work behind the scenes here, and of course obviously to Ben and everybody else that helped to make tonight possible and the webinar to take place. Thanks to our terrific list of speakers and for their interventions, those on video and those who did it in person. I think we've had some terrific examples of how things can move forward. We've had some whole range of unions intervening and contributing tonight. Some great ideas and examples of what we can do. I think it's right that we acknowledge that workplaces vary considerably, and we know it's not always possible to do everything, but I'm pretty sure it's always possible to do something if we look far deep enough and think hard enough about what we can do to make a difference. So let's redouble our pledge and redouble our efforts to build solidarity with the Palestinian people going forward in 2025. It's an absolutely critical moment, so it's essential that we do that. Don't forget the Workplace Day of Action on the 13th of February, 15th of February, the national demonstration in London, the 4th of February, the Cuba and Palestine event in London, and on the 6th in Liverpool. And please don't forget, if you're not a member or your organisation or branch is not affiliated to PSC, please make sure you do, and please make sure to give generously if you can to and donate to the Palestine Solidarity Campaign so that we can carry on fighting and building solidarity together and hosting these type of events. Thank you all very much, and we'll close for this evening. Thank you. Bye.